All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm sorry, you should be used to it. I'm so used to it. Richard,
Well, that's okay.
I'm sorry.
You've done it quite well for a long time.
Go ahead. Take over. Oh, by the way, here. Have patience.
All right, the next item, I believe, were the meetings for the May 12th call meeting. Are there any corrections or questions regarding it? If not, the chair would entertain a motion for approval.
I move to approve.
Is there a second? Motion is made by Dr. Stovall, second by Ms. Dawson for approval. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
I've been waiting 30 years to do that.
Just for clarification, the nominating committee had put forth Patrick Evans' name in nomination. We will take that up at the next meeting. It was not officially on the agenda for us to vote on that, so we will wait until next meeting. We'll get on the agenda and we'll vote on it. Now I'll turn it over to Bill Roloff for any updates from CHC.
Thank you, Mr. President. Honestly, the activity is getting more fast and furious. It's been that way since we started, but there are a number of last-minute details that are going into some of our licensing and certification applications. I will be needing to get with the new board members just to get your basic information because it will be listed at CMS and all the ships at sea. So, but it's moving. We have made 75 offers, 73 have been accepted, and the 2 are still out there. But we're rapidly getting staffed up, and I want to acknowledge, I think I did the last meeting, but I want to be sure to acknowledge Barbara Watson and Bob Ferrer, because they've been pretty much the driving force on interviewing candidates for jobs and working with me on how we structure the organization chart. They've been doing that along with everything else that they're doing, so I appreciate their support. I want to mention the town hall meetings. We had another one last night. Again, it's been a really invigorating experience. We've done 3 now. I'm still hoping to have one at the senior center, but we can't seem to get a date locked down. As I mentioned to the people that attended, we've had good attendance at all of them. We had one in Lovelady, we've had one in Crockett, and we had one last night in Kanawha. Every one of those nights, the weather was a little bit dicey, and people came out anyway. And those meetings ran, each one of them ran between 1.5 and 2 hours. So it wasn't just a real quick, here's what we're doing, and everything was okay, fine, and one was out. A lot of questions asked, a lot of suggestions made. I mentioned to everybody that this sort of town hall blitz that we're doing this month is not the end of it. We'll be doing more and actually try to set up a pattern going forward to keep the community a little more up to date or informed, whatever you want to call it. Every one of the meetings was attended by, had good representation from the board, and I really appreciate the board being there because there were questions asked that I had no clue of the history or something. It was helpful for board members to be able to share their background. So it was just it's been a real good experience. I hope the citizens that came enjoyed it. We encouraged them, and maybe that's why some of y'all are here tonight. We encourage folks to come to these meetings. I appreciate it very much. It was a good experience, and hopefully we'll continue. So I hope everybody that came got something out of it, because, as I said, there were a few folks that either got drowned coming in at Crockett last week in the Crockett meeting, or, they got wet leaving some of these meetings. So, a lot of interest in this community. And then finally, Brian Doris, I'll be trying to find. Brian does not have again, if everybody is familiar, Brian is the CHC czar of information systems. And he and his team and the subcontracting companies that are working on the information system have just done incredible work. When I mentioned that, we're running fast, they're running probably faster than anybody, because they're trying to do the information system for everything. The hospital, the rural health clinic, they are pushing the timetable, or constricting it, whereas when we first started this, we were thinking it's going to take several months. They're bringing it to a shorter time period, which will help with our operations. It will reduce some cost to the board. So he has no formal presentation, but I want to acknowledge him and his team, and offer if the board has any questions. If he volunteered to answer any questions. Only IT questions, not what happened in this book.
We're running really fast. I'm curious, in the last presentation, there was some discussion about perhaps pushing their fees back, since we were going to have PTMCs also.
Sure.
Any look there?
The movement right now, so we're working on two fronts on that. Right now in the contract that we're trying to work out, they're talking about giving us a reduction, not just a pushback, but a reduction in fee for the first month, maybe up to even 50%. So we're pushing hard on that. The other thing that we're doing, as Bill kind of alluded to, is trying to see if we can't push up on that October date. We don't have final kind of sign off. We actually have clinical teams here from CPSI Evident today and tomorrow and Thursday trying to figure out that plan. But so we haven't pushed it off too far. We're working on a reduction the first month, and then seeing if we can't bring that implementation sooner than October. And that will, at that point, we would notify PTMC. And we're talking to them about that as well, their IT group, to say, what can we do, and they're working with us to see what they can do to help us.
Do they still feel like the financial side would be better than you for it?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
The other question?
So, a question of clarification, I'm not sure what Larry just asked, but as of June 1st, we anticipate being able for the physicians at the little health clinic, the PA, and records here in the hospital to be available.
Right. So, so there's financial components to that, and there's medical records components to that, right? So on the financial components, we'll be dual registering patients on the inpatient side. And so we'll be continuing to use ETMC system in order to do that. Registering them so that all the clinical components can continue to take place through that inpatient side, on the ED side, on the lab, radiology. We'll be registering them in the CPSI evidence system so that we can manually enter charges and bill out of the evidence CPSI system. Our plan is to do that for the inpatient, outpatient ancillary services, as well as the rural health clinic upstairs. So, and then TrueBridge, which was approved at the last meeting, they will actually be doing the outsourced billing component of that. From a medical records perspective, we will still have access to, per the contract with ETMC, to the inpatient records. The one piece that we're actually checking on right now is how are we going to do that from the rural health clinic side. I think those records are paper, but there might be some data because they only I believe they had NextGen up there, but I don't know the scope of what they were doing from an electronic medical record perspective. So we're still evaluating that component of it, and how we will access that, whether that will be someone printing off old charts or old records for us as needed, or if we'll have access to that here at site. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Okay, we had on the agenda to take possible action with CHA management agreement. As of late this afternoon, it looks like we're getting very close to an agreement. And for those of you that we have been operating under a transition agreement with CHC, which was going to get us to June 1. We're now all but finished on the management agreement, which will kick into place and take us forward as of June 1. There were two issues. The emails that I got late this afternoon, it looks like they possibly are going to be resolved today, but I didn't get an email indicating that. We will be discussing an executive session with our attorney, and that will be one of the things that he's going to bring up. So if anybody has any questions, we'll get a chance to do it. I don't know the possibility if the board so desired. I know CHC is anxious to get this resolved, that we might come back after executive session, come in a formal order, vote on it, or we might delay it until the next week. So that's a possibility. It depends on whether we get all your questions answered in executive session and whether the two law firms are in total agreement. So, then on approval of the new depository account, this person, I mean, is this the account that we opened last week? We just need to.
No, sir, this is the account that Bob Foray has that he created. I'm not sure yet, we not had a response back to First Community if they're going to offer that capability. I do understand there's another bank account, of which I'm not sure which one, does offer a lot of box capability, but at this time, we've not had a response from First Community.
So do we need to take action or delay?
No, there's no delay.
Well, then that puts us to public comments, and we invite anybody. Judge?
Yeah, I did have something. Brian, when you mentioned the transfer of the records, it occurred to me, as part of the agreement between ETMC and the hospital board, who retains ownership of the medical records for the hospital and the rural health clinic? Do those records transfer formally to the hospital, or are we just allowed to have access to those records for a limited period of time?
I can answer what I know about that. And that is, my understanding is, so they're owned by the hospital. They are stewards of those records for us for a given period of time per the agreement, at which point we have to discuss, do we print those off, what do we do with those, how do we get access to those. But the agreement does stipulate, and I don't recall the terms, but we will have read-only access into those records from on-site here at the facility, from the inpatient side. The outpatient side is a little less clear to me, and that's what we're researching right now. In fact, I'm about to email them about that and see what that plan is. But there is provisions within the agreement, to my recollection, that we have access into those records. But I don't think the agreement gives complete clarification as to what happens to those records long term. Because there are statutes that we need to keep those records for a period of years.
And you had mentioned that the rural health clinic records are hard copies. They're not electronic.
I don't recall. That's what we're checking into right now.
Right, okay.
I know that.
That would make it harder for a transfer of information.
Correct. Yeah, I know that the rural health clinic schedules on an electronic system, and so what we call practice management is handled on an electronic system. We're right now evaluating how the record is stored.
Just as a matter of public information to everybody else, how will we be able to physically find you if we really wanted to ask a question? Where is your office?
Well, I'm not sure where my office will be. I think probably I may have to wear a bell around. The administrative office, right now, we do have an office, as Barbara said, on the 300 home.
Okay.
Everybody, you come down and about halfway down on the right, it's, as I understand, it's the old business office, and we're there.
Okay.
All three of us, Bob and Barbara and myself.
Appreciate that.
back here for public comment?
I've got a question back to the medical records. Sure. While you're doing the dual recording of those records, it just comes to mind that, depending on the number of patients, that's pretty labor intensive. So how many patients are you looking at to serve between inpatient service and outpatient services? And how much time are you looking at in order to facilitate the record transfer? Because, even if you have, handwritten copies, sooner or later, they're going to have to be scanned into a digital component. If I'm not totally mistaken, there's some already legislation about that, so.
Yeah, so there's two different questions there. So from a registration perspective, we'll work with our team on exactly what is required, and we're trying to minimize the amount of time. So we're looking right now at from June 1st to a potential of October 1st to have to dual register patients. So it will increase the registration time. I haven't done time studies. We have somebody on our team who's not here tonight, Alice, who is our guru of patient access and is working with the team there to talk about what are we going to do and how we're going to do that. But yes, it will take a little bit longer. We're talking a matter of minutes. We're not talking very long to dual register those patients. And we will have to do validation of those records because there is going to have to be, just want to make sure that the information that's going into both systems is accurate. Sometimes, obviously for the clinical process, we need a little bit of information, but as we were talking with the radiology group today, they use that clinical information system to pull insurance information. So we want to make sure that not only are demographics correct, but insurance information on both of those systems. So we are going to have to do some validation. There's going to be management in place to be looking. We typically look at 5% of those records, on a weekly basis and say, do we have accuracy within the systems that we have? From a records retention perspective, depending on what we're looking at, we could have up to maybe 21 years of needs to have those records. There is nothing right now that says those records have to be digital. In many cases, we have secure, compliant, regulatory compliant off-site storage for older records. There's no need if there's someone that for a record. And so what we see a lot of times is we don't go through a huge effort of back scanning, where we go and say we're going to scan everything that comes back. When we look at that, a lot of times what we'll do is if a patient comes into the hospital, we'll pull that record in at the time of their visit or admission. That's when we'll evaluate, do we need to back scan this record, and we'll do it at that time. It adds a little bit of time during that visit that we can scan, but what we find is that the vast majority of the records never need to be scanned in. And there's a lot of solutions that we can do that within our medical record system, or if we need ancillary services to do that. We're talking about that as well.
And how many people are you looking at serving? I mean, you must have some estimate in mind of what you doors, what you'd be looking at.
From a registration perspective, I don't know what the numbers are from a registration perspective. From productivity, we are building that model, and as we're hiring people both in the HIM group as well as in patient access, and then also up in the rural health clinic to do that.
You don't have really an estimate?
I do not from an IT perspective. I don't know if anybody else has looked at that yet.
And then to move forward about the digital records, that absolutely meaningful use is what that's called. And so absolutely everybody has to be an electronic health record moving forward.
Moving forward.
Right, from a regulatory standpoint.
Right. And that's really our big push right now. Is the reason that we talked to the board about the reason that we need to move forward with a full electronic clinical system, not just financial use, because the facility right now is meeting meaningful use, and they still have another stage or two to go, and so there's hundreds of thousands of dollars of benefit if we get everybody moved to this record and we continue to meet those requirements. There's incentive payments that are coming this winter.
Let me also add, because this question came up in a couple of our town hall meetings, the concern that anybody might have about accessing your records here. Whether we have them on site or whether, wherever they are, if someone is trying to access their previous record, please contact the HIM department here at the hospital, because we'll work with you. If it means somehow, getting back with ETMC where this, we're fully aware that there are people that are switching doctors or maybe even hospitals or whatever, and hospital, you're entitled, the patient is entitled to a copy. So we want to try to help as much as we can so that people that are trying to get their records to give to a new doctor or to a subspecialist or whatever, you're not trying to figure out, do I call the hospital in Crockett, or do I call Tyler, or do I call CMS? Just start with us and we'll work with you to get what you need.
I just want to provide a little bit of clarification. Barbara gave you the agreement in section 12B, subsection 1, says that we have 24 months of having people with direct access to those records, read-only. And honestly, as we've done other transitions like this, in about the 12 to 18-month window, we see the most use of those records. After that, it becomes a lot of legal requests and things. After that 24-month period, we have the right, under Texas statute, to request copies of those records, and they'll turn those around based on the Texas statutes.
Any other questions or public comment? Hearing none, this topic looks like it's 10:06. We will adjourn and go into executive session. When we reconvene, we may or may not take action. The only thing we will be taking action on will be the approval of the management contract. I'm not sure, depending on what the lawyer tells us, we'll do that tonight or next week. So,